My name is Cassie Sofing, and I'm the campaign coordinator for the Globe Observer Mission Mosquito. And I'm joined today by the stellar colleagues on our team, Dr. Rusty Lowe, who's our science lead for the Mission Mosquito, and Liz Burck, who is our chief science communicator slash writer slash everything. I am so excited to work with Liz any chance I have. We have a webinar planned for you today to take you back to the very beginning of how would you get started and why would you want to be part of the Mosquito Habitat Mapper app. And then at the conclusion, Liz will share a new resource that we've created. It's kind of a science game on how you can use the Mission Mosquito data and some of the other resources that we've created for you to use. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lowe.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here. There are quite a few names here that people who are signing in that I do not know yet. So I'm hoping that this is the first of many times that we get together and talk. I'm going to put my email in the chat so that you can feel free to reach out to us at any time to clarify, to get started, to engage. I see we have someone here who is a parent of a STEM-interested 12-year-old. I think that is fantastic that you're here, and we hope that we can support you in keeping that STEM engagement alive and excited. So, okay, so we have a couple poll questions just to see whether or not you are very familiar with mosquitoes. So we're going to start with just a couple questions. So both male and female mosquitoes bite humans, true or false? Kind of how people are thinking about this question. Looks like a lot of people are saying false. So that's really great. And I don't want to belabor this point, but many people don't realize that it's only the female mosquitoes that bite humans because they are trying to obtain extra protein so that they can make their eggs. And what's really interesting about this is that very few people are actually aware that female mosquitoes don't just drink blood for food. They also, just like the male mosquitoes, obtain nectar from plants in order to eat. And so this is something that's really important. People say, what would the world be like without mosquitoes? Let's get rid of them. Well, they're really important pollinators. So even though there are some mosquitoes that we would rather not have around, they do play an important role in our ecosystem. So yes, only females bite. Okay, so here's a good question. Smelly feet attract some species of mosquito. Like smelly socks, smelly feet. True or false? Smelly feet and stinky socks? So yeah, we have several people that got this answer correct. In fact, when you're thinking about trying to protect yourself from disease-carrying mosquitoes, it's actually really important to have clean clothes on, because what attracts them is they have really, really highly tuned, chemosensors. And, that's how they essentially smell. And so they are seeking out their prey by trying to find carbon dioxide. So for instance, if you've gone running and then you stop running and you're emitting a lot of carbon dioxide, well, what's happening is you're going to also attract more mosquitoes. Another smell that they really like is lactic acid. This is something that we find in our sweat that comes out. There's several other compounds that come out in our sweat. And so, yeah, having smelly clothes is something that is going to attract mosquitoes. So we also know another way to protect yourself from mosquitoes when you're out in the field, outside enjoying yourself, is to wear light clothing, because their chemoreceptors are far stronger than their eye receptors. Actually, they're light receptors, and so they do a lot better looking for dark clothing. They can find dark shapes better than they can find light things. So just simply keeping clean clothes, covering yourself, wearing insecticide where possible. These are all the different ways that insect repellent, I mean, not insecticide, but these are all ways that we can protect ourselves from disease. But the problem remains that if you've got mosquitoes around, you might have individual mosquitoes that actually are carrying either arboviruses or parasites. And this is one of the very important reasons that part of public health is getting rid of mosquitoes. And that's really what we're trying to do in this project, the GLOBE Mission Mosquito project. And this is why we actually developed the Globe Observer Mosquito Habitat Mapper. And today I wanted to give you a really informal discussion about it. Next week, we'll provide a little bit more sciencey information and talk a little bit about the role of mosquitoes in climate change, for instance, how they are responding to changes in our environment, because that's what NASA is doing. NASA is very interested in documenting the changes on our planet, whether or not those changes are mosquitoes, whether or not those changes are changes in temperature, the number of extreme Earth events that take place over the course of the year is increasing because of changes in climate, and that's what NASA is all about. Okay, so let's go to the first slide, Cassie, and thank you for participating in our quiz. And I'm just going to start out here. I'd like to talk more about this, and we can do that in a subsequent session. But this is a beautiful tapestry created by one of my colleagues. And it sort of tells the whole story of mosquitoes, because mosquitoes have been around longer than people have, and they have been evolving with people simultaneously over time. And so the story of humanity is also a mosquito story. We know from work that's been done by scientists that probably more people have died because of mosquitoes than any other single environmental variable on the planet. They are responsible for literally billions of deaths over the years. And so it's a problem that we've had for a very long time. And mosquitoes, they find places to live. These are the breeding sites. That's what we're trying to do with this app, or finding those breeding sites. But they always, because their larvae their babies are essentially in aquatic form. So they hatch in water and they grow in water, and then they emerge as adults and fly out and become essentially terrestrial organisms. Mosquitoes are always been looking for great standing water sources to lay their eggs. And so this is how mosquitoes have moved around the world. For instance, during the early days of exploration and colonization back in the 1400s and 1500s, mosquitoes actually laid their eggs in water barrels. And then those water barrels were put on ships to go across the ocean, took with them the mosquitoes, and those mosquitoes landed in what we call the New World, and then they naturalized. And this process is still undergoing, is happening today. In fact, there's one of the dangerous mosquitoes that we see around the world is Aedes albopictus. It used to only be found in Southeast Asia, but with the emergence of the used tire trade in the 1970s, tires are a fantastic mosquito baby nursery. And so these used tires that were being shipped from one country to another contain these mosquitoes, and now Aedes albopictus is found all over the world. So we have good reasons to want to pay attention to mosquitoes and eliminate them where we live. So let's go to the next slide, and we'll begin talking a little bit more about the mosquitoes that we have and why it's important. So people always ask me, why is NASA interested in mosquitoes? And, part of the reason is because of what NASA does. When people think about NASA, they think about the really exciting things like going to the moon or going to Mars or the Hubble telescope or the James Webb telescope. But they don't realize that most of the science that takes place at NASA is remote sensing the Earth from space and understanding our environmental conditions. So NASA is really interested in monitoring global change, including climate change. And mosquitoes provide us a glimpse into that by their behavior. We know that, for instance, mosquito seasons are starting earlier and ending later in many parts of the world. So if you're not in the tropics, think about when you were a kid, when you first saw mosquitoes, and when you first saw a mosquito this year. And the chances are probably likely it's at least 1 week to 1 month earlier. Another thing that's happening as the climate is warming, we have mosquitoes moving towards the poles in both directions, the range of different species. They're also moving altitudinally as these areas become more hospitable for mosquitoes to live. And finally, I've already talked about those hitchhiking mosquitoes that get in barrels or in cargo in planes or on boats or in cars, and they move in trucks and they move from place to place. And these hitchhiking species previously were located in one area because that was the area where those mosquitoes were best adapted. But as climate has changed, and because mosquitoes are acutely, as well as other insects, they're acutely attuned to environmental conditions. And so when things get a little bit different, they are able to expand their habitat. And that is what's happening and why we have now invasive mosquitoes. Let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to now talk about this tool that you can use to protect yourself and your community from mosquito-borne disease. It's also a tool if you are teaching a young STEM student, child of yours, if you are in fact a STEM learner, or if you are a STEM educator. This is an incredible opportunity to bring science into where you live now and actually make a difference, be part of NASA science and collect data. Next one, please. So this is the other question I always get. True, false. You don't have to write, but just think, can NASA see mosquitoes from space? Because I just said that's what NASA does, right? We sense the environmental conditions from space and use that to better understand the world around us. And the answer to this question is no, they don't actually see individual mosquitoes. But what they do sense are those environmental conditions. And by looking at those, we can understand where mosquitoes where the conditions are for mosquitoes to have population explosions and have outbreaks. And this is really important information for people who are trying to develop models to help predict or project when and where we might have dangerous disease outbreaks. Okay, next one, please. So this is your role as a participant in NASA science. We are asking citizen scientists to help us make that connection between that satellite data that we get from space and the observations that you can make on the ground. And then by making those, making land cover observations on the ground, comparing that to land cover observations from space, and then by putting mosquitoes there in that land cover, we are going to begin to better understand mosquito ecology, mosquito distribution across the landscape, and ultimately be able to support and protect our communities from disease. Next one. So these are the scientific goals that the mosquito habitat mappers have. We have a scientific goal, which I just mentioned, which is understanding mosquitoes and where those breeding sites are located on the landscape. We want to understand that using big data and quantitatively. That's why we need thousands and thousands of observations and why we are engaging citizen scientists like yourself in this effort. But we also have here, importantly, a health goal, because by engaging the public in telling us where they're finding mosquitoes and also eliminating the habitats by dumping out water or by covering cisterns and water barrels and things like that, we are actually fighting mosquito-borne disease at the local scale. And one of the things that helps you understand this is, yeah, mosquitoes are everywhere, right? But the thing is, those mosquitoes that are vectors of disease tend to not be great flyers. There are some mosquitoes that will fly 35 kilometers. These are saltwater mosquitoes, saltmarsh mosquitoes. But they don't carry diseases. But those mosquitoes that carry, for instance, diseases like dengue, chikungunya, yellow fever, a bunch of these different diseases, they're actually not really good flyers. And they might spend their whole lives within 10 to maybe 50, 100 meters of where they are. What this means for us is that if we eliminate the mosquitoes in and around our house, in our parks and neighborhoods, and around our schools, we can actually improve the health of our community and decrease the amount of disease. So this is really super important. Okay, let's go to the next one, please. So we have all this information available for you on our website, but I'm going to go through this really just sort of step by step so you know how to get involved. The hardest part of the Globe Observer is just to register. People tell us that all the time. So you can find the Globe Observer app in your App Store or your Google Play Store. It's a free download, and you can download it, and then it will provide you with a message that says, welcome, what's your email? And this is a one-time thing only. You need to enter your email, and they will send you the information that you need to get started. Why this is so complicated is actually to protect everybody. Because this is a US government program sponsored by NASA, they have very, very secure privacy policies. So by doing it this way, there's no record anywhere of who you are. There is a number in our database that you can identify yourself, but you cannot actually, no one else can find you. And this is really, really critical. So please put up with this one step, because I promise you after that, it will be very easy. And I see a question from Cesar here about the app being appropriate for middle school students. Yes. So, legally speaking, we are supposed to recommend that only students over 13 actually have their own accounts. Many students use this under the supervision of their teachers or their parents. But if they're 13 years or older, they are welcome to create their own account. So thank you for that question. I probably wouldn't have addressed that. This is why it's so important to have the chat and to get your feedback too, and make this a little bit more of a discussion. So as questions arise, do what Cesar did here, and please let us know what you have. Okay, thank you. And thank you for also saying that the app is easy to use. We appreciate that, because sometimes people say, oh my gosh, I got to find my email. I don't know what my email is. I don't know how to find, and they get really frustrated, especially some of our older participants. But once you get into the app, it is really easy to use. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And we will now talk a little bit about how this app works. So once you register, and you will see this screen, which is the Globe Observer screen. We have 4 tools on this screen right now. During the eclipse, there will be a temporary 5th tool so that you can actually follow and collect data for NASA on the eclipse. But right now, this is what it looks like today. And I wanted to point your attention to a gear at the bottom. If you press on that gear, you get a lot of different opportunities to personalize your app. So for instance, if you were a Spanish speaker, you can have the app present to you in Spanish. There are actually 14 languages on this app currently, and we've just done a translation to Swahili. Our objective is to make this, to lower the bar so that everybody can participate. It doesn't cost money. We try to put in as many languages as possible. So you can go and you can do that. The other thing that you can do, if you are, for instance, an educator, or if perhaps you're a community organizer and you'd like to get your community together to do a campaign for a week or two trying to remove mosquitoes, you can actually set up your own team. And we'll talk more about how you can do that. But actually you can just go there and it will say set up, join or create a GLOBE team. And then you just type in the name of the team. You'll get a code that you can share with other people. They put that code in and then they join your team. And why that's important is then all your data is all together and can be downloaded without having to pick and choose through the database who you're working with, who's in your class or who's in your community, things like that. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Cassie. And so when a scientist, when they're conducting research, they always follow a research protocol. And what we have tried to do is really make this research protocol easy. The steps in the app are the steps in the protocol. And so the first thing that you do is you capture where you are, your latitude, your longitude, the date, and the time. And these are automatically populated by the device into your app. And I wanted to point out that there is a little reset button where they have the accuracy scale there on the bottom. And we know that this is something that is not as user-friendly as we'd like, because if you just open up the app and then go to the next step, you will not have as sufficient accuracy that you could actually have. And so we have people that just open the app, go to the first step right away. And then when we get the data, it says accuracy 1,000 meters or 3,000 meters, and maybe that's not too useful. But if you hit that reset button just a few times over the course of a minute, you will rapidly go from 1,000 meters to 100 meters to 20 meters, to 11 meters, maybe down as far as 6 or 3 meters. And this is the kind we want to get around 12 meters or less is a good geospatial accuracy for this work. The next step in this, and where I'm showing you the land cover tool right now because we use these tools together. But both tools are almost exactly alike in terms of learning curve. So once you do one, you can do the other. So the next step is to describe the conditions. Is there snow or ice? Is there standing water? Is it muddy? Is it dry? Are there leaves on trees in it? Or is it raining or snowing? And these might be kind of funny questions, but when you think about NASA science and you think about the fact that they have satellites up in space and they are collecting essentially light data from or spectral data from the Earth, either passively or actively. In fact, the conditions will also impact what they are actually seeing. And many people don't realize that these are not photographs from space. They're actually numbers, and so what this means is sometimes something that's reflective like snow or ice might look the same as a cloud to the sensor. And so we have very, very precise algorithms that have been developed that assist us in making these changes. But the citizen scientists on the ground help us to validate that data by saying, yes, in fact, the whole ground is wet and it's reflecting. So that's one thing that's happening, or it's snow, or there's cloud cover, and therefore not seeing the ground. This is really important information for NASA's satellite missions. So thank you for quickly going through this list when you open up the app. Okay, the next step is just to help us understand where this mosquito habitat is located. So this step really takes literally a minute. What you need to do is we need to have photos. And, we're not scientists. A citizen scientist may not have a PhD in a science field, but because you are collecting photo voucher specimens of what you see, we can confirm to scientists that use our data that our data is robust and of research quality, because we are able to confirm what you are observing with the photographs you provide. So with the app, it automatically, when you open up the land cover app, it will provide a little circle that's the cardinal direction, either north, south, east, west, up or down. And this is how you do it. You do the work. You take your photo and you go up, down, north, south, east, and west. You get those six photos. And then from those 6 photos, then we understand we have a really good understanding of what that environment is. And that's critically important for us to understand why mosquitoes are there. Next one. So now, once you do that, and you can do the mosquito habitat mapper first. And because at the end it says, do you want to make a land cover measurement? And they'll say that right before you finish. And then you can say yes, and just do the steps I just showed you. I probably showed these backwards, but the other app is so much easy. It's not easier, but there are fewer steps. So it makes sense to me to present that first. But then you open up mosquito habitat mapper and you have already seen the first step. The data is probably going to be exactly the same or just very slightly different from what you received from the land cover app. There's the date, the time, the latitude, and the longitude. There's also the error bar that says whether or not you are, within, say, 10 meters resolution or so. You click that and say next. The next step is to sample. Oh no, I'm missing a. I'm missing something here. But what you want to do is you want to identify where those mosquito habitats are. And then the next thing you do is you sample and count the mosquitoes, then you photograph them. And the last step is really the important step. And that important step is to say yes or no, whether or not there are mosquitoes, whether or not the mosquito habitat that you found, if you have actually taken it out of use, because that's how you protect your community. Dump the water out, or if it's a cistern or water that you're saving for watering your garden, just make sure there's a cover on it so mosquitoes can't breed there. All right, next one, please. So let's take a look at these steps. So the first step is to locate the standing water that you see to see if you find mosquito larvae. And remember how I told you that, tires are just a really wonderful nursery for baby mosquitoes. It's dark, it's secure, it's protected. If it's got to be in the shade or else they'll cook. But if that tire's out there, that nice warm water is a wonderful place for them to breed. But also, standing water in puddles or ponds, irrigation ditches, even the centers of epiphytic plants that gather water. These are all places where we have had a success in finding and locating mosquitoes. Okay, next one. The next step is to once you have identified where you find the mosquitoes, then we ask you to sample the water if you have a chance. And what I want to let you know too is that we tried to make this as easy as possible so that you do not have to do every step. If you're just out and you just want to say, here's a mosquito habitat, and dump out the water, that's great. But the scientists really, really need your photographs. And so if you have an extra 15 minutes and you can do the next step, it's super important for NASA science. So we just ask you to just grab about a cup of water or 2 cups of water. And then you can sample it with a cup or a spoon, or here we're using a macro pipette, a turkey baster, and then look in the water and you can see the mosquitoes. They are macroscopic. They're about 1/4 centimeter long, and you can count how many that you see. The next one, please, is once after you have sampled it and counted, and you enter that information into your app, you can then, once you do this sampling, you can actually transfer that sample to a plastic bag and then take it maybe inside, because what we have found is even though the idea was for people to do this work in the field, sometimes things blow around and it's really hard to actually get a good fix on the larva that you're trying to take a picture of. So let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to show you here that you can use this this is what the mosquitoes look like. So you can see very clearly that they are macroscopic. And you should be as precise as you can in your estimate. And you can see that some of them have different looks. Some are a little bit longer, some are a little bit shorter. Some of them have like their body looks like a comma. Some of them are long and thin. And here's a question for you. Just answer in the chat. Why do you think that you have all these different mosquito looks in this one sample here? I'll give you just a minute for that. Love one person to hazard a guess. Yes, thank you, Brendan. Life stages, Cesar, yes. Different stages of a development. So they go through actually what we call them 4 different moltings or instars. They start out really small. Those are you can see the really young ones that are in the first instar. The ones that are really long are the 4th instar. And the ones that look like commas have already moved from the larval stage to the pupal stage. Next one. But when we take our pictures, the best way to identify these mosquitoes, you can't identify the pupa because they're undergoing metamorphosis. They're kind of like, that's the same as a monarch butterfly in a cocoon. It's that stage, right? And so, or chrysalis. So they are kind of amorphic, but the mature 4th instar larva. So choose the largest larva you have and then use that to make your photograph. And then we ask you to obtain a little, here's one right here. They're little clip-on macro lenses. It turns your mobile device into a really powerful microscope. And the optics are actually quite excellent. So these things are about $5 or $6 in an online store like Amazon. You can obtain these very easily. They're just called clip-on macro lens for mobile devices or for phones. And then you can use this to take pictures. Okay, next one, please. We really need these pictures. And I'm just going to give you a couple hints because it's not completely obvious how to take these pictures. But basically, you clip the macro lens over the lens of your camera. And then what you'll see is you'll just see kind of a fuzzy area. And then as you move it around, move it so you get a perfect circle in your viewfinder. And that will let you know that you have aligned it correctly. Then the next step is just put the specimen on like a light colored surface, like a piece of paper. Best is something like a paper plate. Have it in 1 drop of water, and then you put this little guy here. It has a plastic, what we call a collar, right around the lens, and this is designed so you have exactly the perfect focal length. You don't have to. It's not like a microscope where you have to tune it in. It's at exactly the right height. So you just plop that right down on the surface where you have your specimen, and it will come into view and it will be in focus. And then you can take a photo of your specimen right in the app. Next one. So we do have some great handouts that will show you how to use the clip-on magnifier, and we'll make those available for you. They're on our website. But here in the app, you can see that when you take a photograph of a larva, it will actually show up in your app. And then you can use that to compare with the key that we provide so that you can see if you can determine whether or not you have a specimen that might belong to one of 3 medically important genera. Let's go to the next slide. And then finally, at the last step, we ask you to try and eliminate that breeding site. Like I said, that's really important. So those are all the steps. It's really pretty easy. And I'd like now to go to the next slide. And I just wanted to show you how happy I am and how incredible citizen scientists have been around the world collecting mosquito data. On the left are some of those wonderful photos that have been provided by GLOBE Mosquito Habitat Mapper users. This map actually shows 3 different mosquito observation programs. The red one is Mosquito Alert from Spain. The blue, both colors of blue are land cover and mosquito observations using Mosquito Habitat Mapper, and green is iNaturalist. So you can see that citizen science programs can work together, and we have lots of data that's available because of the hard work of citizen scientists contributing to NASA science. Next one. So in our next session, I'm going to talk a little bit about the data. So if you'd like to get started by set up your account and go out and make a few observations of some standing water sites and then tip them out and get rid of them. That would be fine. If you see a larva in there, if you'd like to follow some of the other steps, that would be great. And we'll talk more about what to do with that data next time. But I wanted to say that for those of you that are educators, or you're supporting a young person, or if you yourself are a learner, we have some really fun resources here for you that you can use to build your knowledge and understanding of mosquitoes. Everything from fun little origami type manipulatives that we can create that have true false questions, to a really fun cartoon book, to some different kinds of games and making mosquito traps. And particular attention, we'll talk more about the Larvae Hunter's Guide later. But these are things that you can look at on our website. Go to this URL, Mission Mosquito, and you will find all these resources free for download. Next one. So that took just about as much time as I wanted to take, because one of the resources that we have is the Beyond the Bite Guide. And this is a guide that we have developed. In fact, our colleague here, Liz, was the one who was responsible for putting this together. She is an educator par excellence. And this is just a great place to go and learn about different mosquito diseases and where they're found in a simple, easy to read format. So students can look at this. They're designed for teachers and students without having to go through all the CDC or World Health Organization websites. You can just go to this one place and get simple, factual, and accurate information. And now Liz is going to introduce to you an activity that she just completed and just came up on our website that actually supports learning about these diseases through a sort of fun game type activity. But we're not going to call it a game because there's nothing fun about mosquito-borne disease, but it's an important way for people to do kind of a case study and learn about how mosquito diseases present and what we can do to protect ourselves. Liz, I'm going to let you go now.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rusty. Yeah, Cassie, you can leave it here for just a second. Just to kind of get going, my name is Liz Burck. I'm part of the team and proud to be part of the team. And this team at IGS continues to build our stockpile of resources, as Rusty pointed out. We work hard to develop things that can be used in a classroom or a museum or a science camp or with a group of scouts or whatever. That's part of what we try to do with the whole program, with the education part of that program. But one subtopic, when you're talking about mosquitoes, a subtopic that inevitably always comes up is the mosquito-borne diseases. Excuse me. So we have also made it one of our goals to build awareness of some of those diseases. And so to help with that, we have this resource, the Beyond the Bite, that Rusty just pointed out. And it presents fundamental information on 7 of the more common mosquito-borne diseases, and they're listed there under Part 4. It covers chikungunya, dengue, eastern equine encephalitis, malaria, West Nile virus, yellow fever, and Zika. Within this book itself, as you continue and you go through and look at the separate entries for each of those, it's set up to cover certain topics under each disease. It gives you the cause of the disease. It gives you the range for that disease, the transmission, the incidence, the symptoms for that disease, the treatment for that disease, and a little paragraph on just some general information about it. It gives a little bit of history related to that disease, and it also includes some maps. So you can look at distribution around the world of where some of those diseases occur, those 7 diseases occur. But we decided not too long ago that it's got some great information in it, but it just needs an activity to encourage you to use it. And so we decided, one thing that would probably be kind of fun is to develop a mystery and using kind of a mystery game approach. And it's a mystery that can be solved using this particular resource, using the Beyond the Bite. This new resource is called infection detection. So we'll move to the next slide and we'll tell you a little bit about it here today. So to get started with this is where we're going to pull you in. 4 patients have just entered the emergency department at Culicidae General Hospital. Each patient exhibits different medical symptoms and has an interesting story to tell. A team of doctors trained in identifying mosquito-borne diseases springs into action. In addition to gathering and analyzing medical data, they must also uncover and factor in relevant components of each patient's story. Their diagnosis is critical. Mosquito-borne diseases are a leading cause of death around the world. Time is of the essence. So we start into the game. So that's kind of that, to get you going on it and get you interested. And it goes right on to the next page to introduce the whole thing to you. On this introduction, I'm not going to read everything to you, but I do want to point out some things. The introduction just gives an overall overview of it, I guess we'd say. But I wanted to bring your attention to that section that says this activity complements the Beyond the Bite. Again, trying to make that connection. It does this by presenting science in a real world context. Someone has contracted a mosquito-borne disease. That happens every day in the world. It's building a scientific understanding of mosquito-borne diseases, so it gets into a little bit more science about it. It does this by revealing the potential consequences of human-mosquito interactions, by using role-playing to engage learners in a real-life scenario involving mosquito-borne diseases. So they're going to be given a role, and learners will have to engage in this. So that's always kind of a grab for kids or adults. And it's appealing to those with a strong interest in biology, in health sciences, and also in entomology. So we've come up with this facilitator's guide. This is for you. This is to make it so that you, as the facilitator, will jump in on this, follow these steps, go through these pages, and it's all laid out for you. Everything except for the Beyond the Bite, which you have to go to separately, everything is in this product. So we give you the specifics of the activities, the roles, the activity materials, how to prepare, the role that you're going to play, how to start it, how to play it, how to review it, and we provide the answer keys. The one thing that we kind of liked about this too, as we were developing this, is we set up an introductory script, which I will introduce you to in just a minute. And then we also have included a large set of reproducible pages. So you can print them off and distribute them to the learners in your group. So if we go to the next page, just a couple of things on this one I'd point out to you, because Rusty kind of brought up some of these same things. It can be used in both formal education if you are in a classroom. And again, as she pointed out, going to maybe a 10, 11-year-old students, and then on up through any age student. It's a game, and lots of people like to play games at any age. It can also be used in an informal setting, such as a library or museum, an after-school program. Maybe you have an after-school science club and you just need an activity there. So that kind of thing. The other thing I want to point out is to play a round of this game takes about 40 to 60 minutes. So just kind of keeping that in mind. We're not going to play a round of it, obviously, today. I'm going to keep walking you through the steps. But when you sit down to really have your students engage with this role-playing game, it will take a little bit of time. You, as the facilitator, are going to play two roles in the game. You are going to be playing the game. You will be the head physician at Kula City General, and you will also be the lab director at Kula City General. There will be roles for your learners. A learner will be a patient that's come to the hospital, and then there will be a team of doctors. And so others will play doctors that engage as a team. We listed all of the materials that you would need to do this, and they're all included in this packet, except again, the Beyond the Bite guide that we listed first is a separate document, but you are going to get the introductory script, the doctor's instruction sheet, the doctor's notes that has history and physical exam things on it. Then on to the next page, Cassie, please. You are going to get the doctor's diagnosis sheet. You are going to get patient sheets. You are going to get examination room table tents, patient ID cards, patient waiting room activities. So while the patient is waiting to be diagnosed and the doctors are collaborating, the patient has something to occupy them. It's sort of like being in the waiting room with the magazine. They're going to be doing activities related to some of our mosquito stuff. And then the other thing at the bottom there, we list every step that you need to do to prepare. And we've listed everything that you will need to print out there at the bottom of the page. And if we go on there, we're going to skip over some pages and go on to more of the basics here to at least introduce it. So Cassie, if you go on, we should be at page 9 of the book. Thank you. This is the introductory script. And I will take just a minute to read this to you because it's pretty engaging, and I want you to get a sense of that. And so what we've done is laid out for you how to introduce it to the class. You don't even have to read through the thing and go, okay, what am I going to say? What should I say to the class to get this started? We have it all written here for you. You're going to walk to in front of the group of learners, and you're going to say, hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Burck, and I am the head physician at Kula City General Hospital. I also serve as the lab director of Kula City's blood lab. As you know, Kula City General is a world-renowned hospital that specializes in diagnosing and treating mosquito-borne diseases. I would like to now speak directly to the patients. We want to thank you for putting your trust in our hospital and our doctors. We're well aware of the fact that you chose to come to our hospital because there's a strong possibility that your illness is a result of a mosquito bite. So I, as the director, have assembled a group of highly trained doctors to work on your case. They will gather facts and data by asking you questions. Again, I'm not going to continue reading, but you get the idea. You're describing it for them as a person engaged in the story. Then you have a message to the doctors. We appreciate your dedication to the patients. The hospital has compiled our standard packet of medical documents. Please make sure you have those and use those and reach a diagnosis. To both patients and doctors, your attention to detail is expected. And then when this examination is complete, the doctors will need time to reach that diagnosis. And now you're telling the patients too, you will go to a patient waiting room and wait for the doctors to reach their decision. And it continues on to the next page with just a couple more paragraphs, but at the end, it just says, now let's get going. Time is of the essence. Your patient's health is in jeopardy. So just in 4 minutes, you can set the whole scene, give some basic instruction, and make sure that they have the sheets in front of them that they're going to work off of, and they can kind of take it from there. We tried to make it that self-explanatory. Again, without getting into all the sheets, which would take a little bit of time, there are many, but the next one that I want to show you, just to give you an example, is one of the patient sheets. So in a group, you'll divide your learners into groups. We recommend 3 or 4 in a group. One person will be the patient. This patient does not know what disease they have. They're not told you have chikungunya. They don't know that. Just as you, as a patient walking into a hospital, you're going there to find out what you have. You don't know what you have. but we did provide them with some essential information. So on each of, there's 4 different ones. We only did 4. That would give you 4 rounds of playing the game. They take a little bit of time, so we thought that would be probably enough. But there's 4 of these. Each one is different. This one says, that you recently traveled to the state of Colorado to visit some of the natural attractions that are there. Since you intended to spend most of your time outdoors, you took your tent, your hiking gear, and your insect repellent. Your favorite part of the trip was camping and hiking in Rocky Mountain National Park. And each trail was challenging but beautiful. But 2 things caught your attention while on several hikes were the number of dead trees that you saw in the area and the sporadic appearance of dead birds just off the trail. And you thought, that's kind of weird. You thought both might be related to either drought or maybe some local disease or something. But you also had to deal with many mosquitoes, and even using the repellent did not prevent you from getting a few mosquito bites. So we've laid down their whole history that's going to apply to this situation. And then we gave them their medical symptoms. Since returning home 10 days ago, you've not felt well, you've taken your temperature, you've done this, you've seen this, you've vomited a few times, blah, blah, blah. It's all written right there. While they're preparing, we asked, I think it's important, we all think, the team here thinks it's important that they list those symptoms so they don't have to go back and read through it every time. Just list them. I don't feel well. I'm really tired. I developed an itchy rash on my arms and legs. So just briefly list those. At the bottom, give additional information that may be important, your recent activities, and why that may be important. Well, I saw some dead birds on the trails. It might be important because it might have something to do with maybe mosquitoes bit them, or maybe mosquitoes were eating them. I don't know. But I mean, I know that we all know, but a 14-year-old may not. So let them write those things down. And so they have this sheet to work off of. And there are 4 different scenarios in different places in the world, visiting different places and setting up different circumstances in which they've come in contact with mosquitoes. So that's kind of how the patient is going to work their role. And the doctor will be asking questions and filling out forms as they go along. And the last thing that will happen, and so the next sheet gives the last thing that's going to happen, which is the doctor's diagnosis report. And so after the doctors sit and collaborate, what do you think? They go to the Beyond the Bite. Let's look this up. Does Eastern equine encephalitis even occur in Colorado ever? Has it been reported there? Is it common there? They go back to the Beyond the Bite and they will get the symptoms. They will see the maps. Everything's right there. They just need to do a little research. Once they do that research and reach a group decision, they list their diagnosis. They list 3 things that were their strongest indicators for that diagnosis. And then what is their recommended treatment? That is also, they don't have to come up with something that's also in the Beyond the Bite, what they're going to tell the patient to do. And then they sign off, just as you would in the hospital. The patient signs, I've been evaluated by these doctors. The doctors all sign. That's how you know who the group was and if they all participated. And then they bring that up to you and give it to you. We have the answer sheet for you. We will tell you what disease this person had. And then you can tell them whether they're right or wrong. And again, while the doctors are making all these decisions, the patient is in the waiting room working on some of those other things that Rusty showed you earlier. So the document is quite long. It has 60 pages of game stuff. And there's much more. In addition to that, there's those worksheets. They're all included. So they can make the mosquito tellers. There's crossword puzzles. There's word searches. This to keep them engaged and busy while the doctors are working. So all of that is in the infection detection game booklet. So please have a look at it. give it a try with any age group. It would be engaging and fun. And it's the chance for the kids to learn more about mosquito-borne diseases. It's a chance to use that beyond the bite guide and just get a better sense of what, when we talk about mosquitoes are dangerous, they can be deadly, they spread diseases, to get a better idea of what those are and a better appreciation, I guess, of what all that means. So give it a try and let us know what you think and how it went. We would appreciate any feedback. And we hope that if you have any questions, you can contact any of us at any time. So thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Liz. And I actually had a chance to play the game. I thought it was, I don't want to say it's a game because there's nothing fun about mosquito diseases, but I really did actually learn a lot. And the people that I did it with were very engaged. So thank you for
Cool.
presenting this.
Sure.
So, every time we have our monthly webinar, we try to do, one thing that teaches a little bit about the app. We try to present something about a tool or an activity that you can use. Next week, we are going to be talking about climate change, and we will be introducing the climate and carbon work that is being done. And so we'll be talking about that, and we'll also talk about climate and mosquitoes. So sometimes it's science, sometimes it's technical, what you do in the field, sometimes it's education, but I hope you will join us again and give us feedback on what you'd like us to cover in this work. Cassie, your turn.
Thank you, Rusty. And thank you, Liz. That was a great presentation from both of you folks. On the screen right now, I just pulled out just the United States and a little bit of Central America there to show you how active mosquito observers have been in the past month. And I have a web link on here that I can put into the chat. But basically, if you'd like to see what your observations look like, it's as simple as just clicking on one of those dots. And I did this dot right here. And I can see that this is an area that was being investigated as a potential breeding habitat because of the water that had collected along the side of the road. So all of your observations are extremely helpful. All of your observations are also available if you at any time are interested in pulling together a group of students, or you have an individual that would like to do a science project. And so we are happy to help you take a look at the data and make suggestions and help you with questions and kind of get you guided in the right direction. Our last slide is our next webinar will be in October. It will be October 11th. And we have, yes, our data is open. Anyone can access our data. And it's not just mosquito data. There's cloud data, there's land cover data, there's water quality, air quality. There's all kinds of data. You will be so surprised. So surprised. And we will touch on that next month at our webinar in October 11th. So please sign up and join us then. We have a new campaign, our year of climate and
carbon
and climate, yes. And Rusty will talk about the climate connection to mosquitoes and their habitats. And Grace Crane-Wright from the GLOBE Implementation Office will share information about climate and carbon project then.
And for Cesar, who just asked about the accessing the data for a science project, we'll actually show you next week how easy it is to download and access that data. And I think in November, we will talk a little bit about the International Virtual Science Symposium, which is a science fair, which is like worldwide. And kids are all welcome to use the GLOBE data in that activity. So please stay tuned for that.
With that, I thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you in October. And if you have any questions, as Rusty mentioned earlier, yes, indeed, we'd be happy to answer them. Thank you all very much for joining us, and we'll see you in just a few weeks in October.
We hope to see all of you. Thanks so much, and have fun with NASA Science.